Whether we're aware of it or not, most of us use line every day as a means of written communication. How we use line can help us express the message that we wish to convey. Big, bold lines make written information seem more important or more urgent. Conversely, things written in small, thin text seems like information that a viewer is not expected to read. In the case of fine print in advertising, it may be information that the marketer doesn't even want you to read. Jenny Holzer is a contemporary artist who is known for using big, bold text to convey a message. The text that she uses is often streaming in order to quickly grab the viewer's attention. Since this piece was on display in Times Square, it is apparent that the artist wanted her work and her message to be visible to as many people as possible. Conceptually, a line is nothing more than the trace left by a moving dot. It is the result of an uninterrupted travel from point A to point B. All lines can be broken down into two categories, actual and implied. Actual lines run continuously between their points. The paintings of this American artist, Sol LeWitt, were executed on walls using the rigid format of the grid to plot the angles and trajectories of his lines. Because this line does not run continuously across its points, it is an example of implied line. Due to a phenomenon called gestalt, our brains are always trying to make sense of the world around us by making connections and jumping to conclusions. It is more convenient for our brains to view this as a line rather than as a series of unconnected dashes. This image is a further example of gestalt psychology. Our brains arrange this collection of dots so that the image of a dog sniffing leaves emerges. Another way to create implied lines is through gestures or visual clues in a composition. The gestures of the figures in this piece by the 17th century French painter Nicolas Poussin lead our eyes like arrows to the tomb in the center of the composition, on which it's written Et in Arcadia ego, a personification of death reading, "Even in utopia, I exist." Lines can take on many different characteristics. They can be active, like these by the artist Keith Haring, or they can appear static, like this drawing of a grid by Agnes Martin. They can be geometric, like the ones created by Sol LeWitt, or they can be organic, like those found in this painting by Jackson Pollock. This painting by Jonathan Lasker is a fine example of both organic and geometric lines being used together in one artwork. Lasker also creates a balance between active and static lines in this piece. Contour lines are used by artists to describe the edges of shapes. These edges can be either exterior or interior. Exterior contours delineate the edges of a figure from its background. Interior contours describe the boundaries of shapes found within an individual figure. Because contour line drawings do not use value to describe light and shadow, they often seem flat and two-dimensional, as illustrated by this Picasso portrait of the composer Igor Stravinsky. Without interior contours, a drawing flattens even further to mere outlines, or exterior contours. The flatness of contour drawings creates a cartoony aesthetic that we relate to certain graphic mediums such as comic strips, comic books, and animation. Many artists work with contour lines as a way to sketch and figure out the structure of a finished piece. Some contour drawings, like these by the British artist David Hockney, are intended to be finished pieces unto themselves. There are a number of ways lines can be used to create an illusion of three-dimensionality. The more lines that an artist groups together, the darker the area of the drawing becomes. Hatching is one such technique, where an artist draws a series of parallel lines to define value. When the black of the ink mixes with the white of the paper, our eyes read the product as a gray. The closer together the parallel lines are drawn, the darker the gray becomes. The further apart the parallel lines are drawn, the lighter the gray. With cross-hatching, an artist overlaps series of parallel lines going in different directions. The more of the paper that is filled with the medium, the darker the image becomes. Cross-hatching often yields darker results than single-directional hatching. In this image by the illustrator Edward Gorey, The dress of the woman on the left is drawn using single hatched lines. The figure of the visiting demon is drawn with cross-hatching. As with pen and ink drawings, certain printmaking techniques, such as etching, require the use of hatching and cross-hatching to create the illusion of light and shadow. This etching by the German artist Käthe Kollwitz illustrates how an artist can use both techniques on one figure. This effect can create a wide range of values from the very light to the very dark. Stippling is a technique by which many small dots are built up to create value. As with hatching and cross-hatching, the more marks you make, the darker the drawing becomes. Contour hatching is a way to use line to describe value as well as the roundness of a form. It is often used in the printmaking technique of engraving and is most recognizable in the portrait style found on paper currency. As this early piece by the sculptor Alexander Calder teaches us, line is not just confined to the 2D. In this piece, the contours of the acrobat's forms are created by bending actual brass wire.